There are betrayals that don't explode. They don't come with screaming matches or slammed doors. Sometimes, they arrive quietly, in who doesn't show up. If you'd asked me that Tuesday afternoon how my life was going, I would have shrugged and said, pretty normal. Work was steady. Rent was paid early for once. I had leftover chili waiting in the fridge and a half-finished documentary queued up for later. I was driving back to my apartment in Madison, Wisconsin, the kind of early winter evening where the cold feels personal. Snow hadn't fallen yet, but the air carried that sharp promise that it would. The streets were damp, reflecting traffic lights like broken mirrors. I stopped at an intersection I'd crossed 100 times before. That's when a pickup ran the red. The sound wasn't loud at first, it was violent. Metal folding. Glass bursting. My body snapping sideways as if gravity itself had changed its mind. Then nothing. When I woke up, I was pinned halfway against the driver's door, snow drifting through a shattered window. Someone was yelling my name, even though I didn't remember telling anyone what it was. A paramedic's face hovered above me. Stay awake. Don't close your eyes. I remember thinking, that sounds optional. At Meriter Hospital, time dissolved into fragments. Bright lights. Words like internal bleeding and fractures floated above me without landing. I signed something. Someone apologized for the wait. Then surgery swallowed everything. When I came to, my chest felt like it had been crushed under concrete. My left leg was suspended. Tubes ran from my arms. Every breath burned. The first clear thought I had was simple. I need my parents. I whispered it to a nurse adjusting my fore. Have you contacted them? I asked. She nodded. Your emergency contacts were notified. Are they coming? She hesitated, just enough. I'm not sure. That night, still fogged with medication, I texted them. Mom, Dad, I was in a car accident. Surgery went okay. I'm awake. Read. No reply. A few hours later. Doctors say recovery will take a while. Would really like to see you. Read. Still nothing. By the third day, the pain was manageable, but the silence wasn't. I left a voicemail this time. I tried to sound calm, like I wasn't scared. Hey. It's me. Just checking in. On day 4, a hospital social worker asked who would be helping me after discharge. Who would drive me? Who would sign rehab paperwork? I'll figure it out, I said too quickly. She gave me a look people reserve for truths they don't want to argue with. On the 5th day, someone finally came. Not my parents. It was Diane Carter, an old family friend. She brought muffins and awkward cheer. They've been so busy, she said casually. With Evan's big week and all. My stomach tightened. What big week? Her smile faltered. Oh. You didn't know. That's how I learned my younger brother Evan had received a major industry award in Chicago. Dinner. Speeches. Photos. My parents' front row, beaming. While I was learning how to breathe without pain. That night, I sent one last message. I almost died this week. Where were you? This time, the reply came fast. We didn't realize it was that serious. Don't make assumptions. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. They hadn't been unreachable. They'd been unavailable by choice. And that was when I understood something was deeply wrong. Because if they could leave me alone like this, what else were they capable of? I thought the silence was the worst part. I was wrong. They didn't come back to apologize. They came back because they needed something. By the time my parents finally walked into my hospital room, I had stopped expecting comfort. I was sitting upright for the first time without help, sweat collecting at the base of my neck from the effort alone. My ribs still protested every breath. The TV was on mute, showing a local weather forecast I wasn't listening to. Then I smelled my father before I saw him, that sharp cologne he'd worn my entire childhood. "Hey, kiddo," he said, like we'd bumped into each other at the hardware store. My mother followed, clutching a bouquet of supermarket flowers, her face already folded into concern. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "You look exhausted." I waited. They sat down. Commented on the hospital food. Asked about physical therapy. My mother adjusted the flowers like she needed something to do with her hands. No apology. No explanation. Finally, I said it. "Why are you here?" Silence filled the room. My father cleared his throat. "We wanted to talk about Evan." "Of course." My chest tightened, not from pain, but from recognition. I had known, somehow, that my recovery wasn't the reason. "What about him?" I asked. My mother's eyes dropped to the floor. "There's been an issue." "At work." My father leaned forward. "There's an investigation." The word landed heavy. "An investigation for what?" He hesitated. "Financial discrepancies. The firm claims he authorized some transactions that weren't appropriate." I stared at him. "So? Fraud." "Alleged," my father corrected quickly. "Nothing's proven." "And you came to tell me this because—" They exchanged a look, the same look they'd shared my whole life when deciding how much truth I could handle. "The legal fees are high," my mother said softly. "And the bail." There it was. My heart sank, but my voice stayed steady. "You want money?" My father nodded once. "You've always been good with finances. You planned ahead. You've got savings." I laughed, a short, disbelieving sound that hurt my ribs. I almost died. "You didn't answer my calls. And now you're asking me to drain my savings." "We wouldn't ask if there was another option," my mother said quickly. "But this is family." Family. The word felt foreign in the room. "When I was lying here alone," I said, "was I family then?" My father's jaw tightened. "Don't turn this into a competition." "This isn't a competition," I snapped. "It's a pattern." They didn't argue that. My mother reached for my hand. I pulled it back before she could touch me. "You've always been the responsible one," she said, almost pleading. "Evan needs help." "He needs consequences," I replied. My father stood abruptly. "You're being selfish." That one stung, not because it was true, but because it was familiar. Every time I'd set a boundary growing up, they'd called it selfishness. "I'm saying no," I said quietly. My mother began to cry. Real tears this time. "If you don't help, everything falls apart." I met her eyes. "It already did. You just didn't notice until now." They left angry. Hurt. Empty-handed. But they weren't done. 2 days later, I was discharged. A coworker drove me home to my apartment in Milwaukee, helping me up the steps one painful inch at a time. The lobby smelled faintly of cleaning solution and wet coats. And there they were. Waiting. My parents stood near the mailboxes like they owned the space. "We need to talk," my father said. "I'm not discussing this here," I replied. "You're embarrassing us," my mother hissed. I leaned on my crutch, shaking but upright. "You embarrassed yourselves when you chose a gala over your son in surgery." My father stepped closer. "If you don't help your brother, you're choosing to tear this family apart." I looked at them, really looked. They weren't worried about Evan. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about how this would look. "If you don't leave," I said calmly, "I'll ask the building manager to call the police." They froze. My mother whispered, "You'll regret this." I nodded. "Maybe. But I won't regret saying no." They left without another word. And as the elevator doors closed, I realized something unsettling. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about control. I thought saying no would end it. Instead, it triggered something far worse. A campaign to rewrite the story and turn me into the villain. I thought the worst thing my family could do was abandon me in a hospital bed. I was wrong. The call started 2 days after I got home. Numbers I didn't recognize. Voicemails that didn't say much, just heavy sighs and, "Call me when you can." Texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. At first, I assumed it was concern. Word spreads fast when something goes wrong. Then a cousin finally told me the truth. "They're saying you refuse to help," she wrote. "That you're holding money hostage. That you're bitter and exaggerating what happened." I sat on my couch, leg propped up, ribs wrapped tight, staring at my phone like it had insulted me. Exaggerating. I pulled up my messages. Every unanswered text. Every read receipt. I opened my hospital discharge summary, the surgery timestamp, the rehab notes. I wasn't trying to build a case, not yet. I just needed proof that I hadn't imagined my own abandonment. The real blow came that night. A local news clip popped up on my phone. My brother Evan, shown in a still image from his award ceremony, now framed with the words "under federal investigation." Financial misconduct. Shell accounts. Wire transfers. The same brother my parents had skipped my surgery for. My phone exploded. Friends. Co-workers. Distant relatives. Everyone asking if I was okay. Everyone asking what happened. My parents called too. I didn't answer. When I finally did, my father didn't bother with pleasantries. "This is not what it looks like," he said immediately. "What does it look like?" I asked. "That Evan is being set up. He made mistakes, but he's not the mastermind. Bigger people are involved. And that changes what?" I said. "It changes everything," my mother cut in. "This is why you need to help. Now more than ever." There it was again. Not "how are you healing?" Not "we're sorry we failed you." Just urgency. Pressure. Fear for themselves. "You didn't come when I was broken," I said. "You only came when your image was." Silence. Then my father's voice hardened. "Don't punish the family for old resentment." Old resentment. I hung up. The next message didn't come from my parents. It came from Evan. His email was quieter than I expected. No rage. No denial. He admitted he'd signed documents he shouldn't have. That he'd enjoyed the lifestyle. That he hadn't asked questions when he should have. "I know how they treat you," he wrote. "I always did. You shouldn't have to pay for this." For a moment, just a moment, I almost believed him. But then I realized something important. Even now, he wasn't asking how I survived. He was asking me to save what he'd broken. I met with a lawyer friend the next day. We didn't talk about revenge. We talked about boundaries. I removed my parents as emergency contacts. Changed passwords. Locked my credit. Sent a formal notice requesting no further contact unless through legal channels. Quiet steps. Clean steps. The investigation moved fast after that. Evan took a plea deal. Probation. Cooperation. No jail time. My parents called one last time. "This is on you," my mother said. "You could have stopped this." I didn't argue. I just said, no. I stopped being useful. Weeks passed. My body healed faster than my expectations did. Physical therapy hurt, but it was honest pain. It led somewhere. One Sunday, I had dinner with relatives who hadn't asked me for anything. No money. No explanations. Just a chair at the table. "You don't owe us anything," one of them said casually. I almost cried. That's when it finally settled. Family isn't who demand silence in exchange for belonging. It isn't who shows up only when they need to be rescued. Real family, real love, doesn't keep score. Walking away wasn't revenge. It wasn't bitterness. It was self-respect. And for the first time in my life, the silence around me didn't feel cold. It felt free. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't holding on. It's letting go of the people who only love you when you're useful.